Katherine Johnson by Thea Feldman, illustrated by Alyssa Petersen. What is your favorite subject in school? Have you ever thought about why you like it so much? Have you ever wondered what kind of career you might have someday that involves your favorite subject? You should meet Katherine Johnson. From the time she was a very little girl, Katherine loved math. And she knew why, too. It was hard, she said, remembering doing math in school. But when you got it, you got it. You had to work for it. There was a right and a wrong, and you knew when you got there. Another thing Katherine knew was that she would someday find a job that involved math. But even she never imagined that her math skills would help the U.S. put the first man on the moon. Chapter 1: A Family to Count On. On August 26, 1918, Katherine Johnson was born in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia. She was the youngest of 4 children. Her father owned a farm and her mother had been a teacher. Ever since she could remember, Katherine was interested in learning about almost anything. She couldn't wait to be old enough to start elementary school. Before then, she followed her siblings to school and tried to go in with them. Most of all, Katherine loved to count. She counted family members, dishes, the number of steps from home to school, and so much more. Everything is math, Katherine said. Katherine believed she got her gift for numbers from her father. Even though her father had only completed the 6th grade, Katherine said she was the smartest man she ever knew. He could look at a tree and know how many boards of wood he could get out of it, she said. He could solve any math problem, too. Before she turned 6, Katherine finally started school. Because she could already read, she skipped 1st grade. She would skip 5th grade, too. In school, Katherine always had her hand in the air to ask questions. Her teachers encouraged her. Each night, Katherine and her siblings did their homework seated around a big table. After I finished mine, I'd help them with theirs, she recalled. When Katherine was a little girl, most African Americans did not go to school beyond 8th grade. They went to work to help their families. At the time, the country also had a history of racial segregation. That means that there were many separate things for African Americans and white Americans, including schools. Katherine's hometown did not even have a high school for African Americans. Katherine's father, however, was determined that all of his children would go to high school and to college, too. When Katherine's eldest brother, Charles, was ready for high school, Katherine's father moved the entire family 120 miles west to Institute, West Virginia. Institute had a high school for African Americans, and Katherine's mother and father made sure all the children graduated from it. Katherine, her siblings, and her mother spent each school year in the town of Institute. Katherine's father stayed in White Sulphur Springs to take care of the farm. Because Katherine had skipped 2 grades, she started high school when she was just 10. She became a college freshman at 15. Most people start college when they are around 18 years old. Chapter 2: Math, Katherine's number 1 love. Katherine found it very exciting to be a student at West Virginia State College. There seemed to be countless classes she wanted to take. She especially loved French and thought she wanted to graduate with a degree in French, but she still loved math too. Then one day she ran into Mrs. Lacey, a math teacher she knew from back home. Mrs. Lacey insisted that Katherine sign up for her class. Mrs. Lacey made Katherine realize she wanted to concentrate on her math skills and graduate with a degree in math. I was just as fascinated with college math as I had been with high school math, Katherine remembered. She decided to major in math and French. Katherine took every single math class the college offered. One of her math professors, W. Schifflin Claytor, even created a couple of new classes just for her. He told Katherine, "You would make a good research mathematician." Katherine asked him, "What does a research mathematician do?" Mr. Clatard answered, "You do research in mathematics." Research means to study materials in order to confirm facts and research new conclusions. Katherine asked, "Well, where do you get a job doing that?" His reply was, "That's going to be your problem, but I am going to have you ready." Katherine was ready by the time she graduated with honors in 1937 at the age of 18. It was difficult at this time, however, for many African Americans, especially women, to find good jobs. The only good jobs for college-educated African American women at the time were teaching or nursing jobs. After a few months, Katherine got her first job. She taught French and piano to elementary school children. At her father's urging, she went to graduate school too. During this time, Katherine also got married and started a family of her own. In 1952, Katherine heard that the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, NACA, a government agency in Newport News, Virginia, was hiring African American female research mathematicians. Within a week, she and her family moved to Newport News. Katherine immediately applied for a job at NACA. She found out that all the jobs for the coming year had already been filled. So Katherine became a substitute teacher and did other work too. Then, the following year, NACA offered her a job. Katherine was thrilled. She was finally going to find out what a research mathematician did. Chapter 3: A Computer in a Skirt. Katherine started at NACA in June 1953. The agency was dedicated to flight research. Among other things, NACA engineers had developed the first aircraft that could fly faster than the speed of sound. NACA's research work required a lot of complex math. In 1953, electronic computers were not generally used, so research mathematicians, who are often called computers, did the math that the engineers needed. Katherine joined a group of about 12 African American women who were research mathematicians. There was also a group of white American women research mathematicians. The two groups worked and ate separately until the civil rights movement that had started in the 1950s brought an end to racial segregation in 1964. At NACA, Katherine was finally able to see firsthand what a research mathematician did, and she loved it. You had a big data sheets with maybe 15 or 20 columns across and 25 lines down, she explained, and you solved those all the way across for days. It was fascinating. Research mathematicians sometimes left the group and worked full-time with the engineers on a specific project. When the project was done, they returned to the group. Shortly after she arrived, Katherine was sent to work full-time on a flight research project. The engineers quickly became impressed by Katherine's math skills, as well as her interest in learning as much about the project as she could. Working on the project, Katherine did what she always did. She asked a lot of questions. She knew that the more she understood about the project, the better her contribution to it would be. "There's no such thing as dumb questions," Katherine always said. "It's dumb if you don't ask it." Because of her intelligence, curiosity, and upbeat attitude, Katherine never returned to the group of research mathematicians. She was requested on many special projects. Katherine was a valued member of NACA, and the agency turned its focus to space exploration in the late 1950s. The United States and the Soviet Union were then the two most powerful countries in the world. The Soviet Union was a former federation of communist republics occupying the northern half of Asia and part of Eastern Europe. Its capital and largest city was Moscow. However, each wanted to be number one, and that included being the first nation to explore space. In 1958, NACA became the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or NASA. Its efforts became devoted to what was called the space race. Little did Katherine know at the time just how far she, NASA, the U.S., and the entire world would go. Chapter 4. Katherine takes off. The Soviet Union took an early lead in the space race. In 1957, they launched Sputnik 1. It was the first man-made satellite to successfully orbit the Earth. A satellite is a small object that revolves around a larger object. The U.S. launched its first satellite the following year. The Soviet Union took lead again when it came to sending a man into space. On April 12, 1961, Cosmonaut Yuri Gregarian, a Russian astronaut is called a cosmonaut, orbited the Earth aboard Vostok 1. The U.S. followed less than a month later. On May 5, 1961, astronaut Alan Shepard made a partial orbit around the Earth in Freedom 7. It had required extremely complex and precise mathematical calculations to arrive at the proper flight path for the spacecraft and to keep Shepard safe. Who had done the math? Katherine. For her entire career, Katherine insisted that no one person was responsible for any specific achievement. She believed in teamwork. However, she also knew just how skilled she was at math. NASA knew it too. NASA put Katherine on the team that worked to send Friendship 7 and astronaut John Glenn into space on February 20th, 1962. Katherine worked on the tracking system that would predict, within 2 miles, where the spacecraft would land after making full 3 orbits around the Earth. NASA was relying on its first electronic computer to calculate Friendship 7's flight path. John Glenn, however, had more faith in Katherine than in any new technology. He insisted that Katherine check the computer's numbers. He said, "If she says the computer is right, I'll take it." Katherine worked for a day and a half on the calculations that the computer had done. She arrived at the exact same numbers. Katherine's precise spaceflight calculations were not her only unique accomplishments at NASA. Early in NASA's history, only men attended briefing meetings where spaceflight was discussed. Katherine wanted to be at those meetings and kept asking if she could go. She even asked, "Is there a law against it?" Katherine's persistence paid off. She was eventually invited to attend all briefing meetings, and she participated in the discussions. She was also the first woman in her division to have her name included on a report. The report contained theories Katherine had helped develop about how to launch, track, and bring back spacecraft. Katherine also became an important member to the team behind Apollo 11. By the late 1960s, both the Soviet Union and the U.S. had landed unmanned vehicles on the moon, but neither had ever put a person on the moon. Apollo 11 was going to be the first manned spaceflight to land on the moon. On July 16, 1969, Apollo 11 launched and headed to the moon with 3 astronauts on board. Katherine had computed the path to get them there. The landing and successful return of Apollo 11's flight to the moon made headlines all around the world, and it could not have been possible without Katherine's help. Four days later, on July 20th, 1969, Katherine, along with the rest of the world, watched on television as astronaut Neil Armstrong took mankind's first steps on the moon. The little girl from White Sulphur Springs who loved to count had helped the U.S. make world history. The U.S. was now the clear leader in the space race. Katherine admitted to being concerned about the return flight. "If I were off by just a few feet or seconds, they were done for," she remembered. "The astronauts wouldn't be able to return home." Katherine had no need to worry. Her calculations were as accurate as ever. The astronauts splashed down safely in the Pacific Ocean on July 24, 1969. Chapter 5. An Infinite Contribution. Katherine worked on every space mission at NASA until she retired in 1986. She had done extraordinary, history-making work while raising her family, dealing with the death of her first husband in 1956 and getting remarried in 1959. "I found what I was looking for at NASA," said Katherine. "Never did I get up and say, I don't want to go to work." Katherine received many honors for her contributions to the U.S. space program, including a flag that had gone to the moon. A building has also been named after her at NASA's Langley Research Center in Hampton, Virginia. In 2015, she received the Presidential Medal of Freedom. It is the highest honor an American civilian can receive. Katherine was 97 at the time, an impressive number even for a math lover. Katherine's love of math led to her help make history for the space program, for women's rights, and for racial equality. Through it all, Katherine remained humbled about her remarkable achievements. She liked to quote her father, who used to tell her and her siblings, "You are as good as anybody, but you're no better." Katherine shared her father's saying with many students she spoke to after she retired. She wanted to encourage young people the way she had been encouraged. She also told them, "I like to learn. You can learn if you want to." Now that you've met Katherine Johnson, don't you want to learn as much about your favorite subject as you can? Katherine is proof that if you stay grounded in what you love, the places you go can be out of this world.